this is a good topic of like, how do we make players play longer? How do we make things more attractive? And I saw a topic on the forums that I think was really good.
Hmm.
And it's essentially, actually, it's not just one topic. A lot of people have been asking this, I think, especially all the veterans. And it's essentially the question of, how do we get players to play on the old servers? How do we get players to play on Xanadu and Deliverance and Exodus and Celebration and all these things? And we know that a lot of players are attracted to the new servers. Why are they attracted? It's hard to really know in total, because it's hard as a new player. If you go and ask a new player, they probably have a bunch of things that they're going to say that make it attractive to them. But a lot of them probably would apply to the old servers too, right? Without them realizing it. Like, oh, they want a new server where they can have wilderness, or they want to be, they want a server where they can be the person that goes out and has a deed, let's say hermit style, or they can go out and yeah.
Zetran's comment is great. No one wants to color in a coloring book that's already been colored in.
Right. Okay, so let's say it's that. They want a fresh server where they can go out and do their worm things. They want wilderness, essentially, is what you're saying, Zetran. They want mines that are fresh and land that is, grass or whatever the tile is, and trees and all this stuff. Okay, what does wilderness mean to us? Like, is that it? Is wilderness a land that has trees and grass and no pavement and no houses and mines that are not mined? Is that all that it would take, to classify that as wilderness?
I know where this is going, but I'm going to just point out this idea here that elaborate on Zetran's comment, and that's like the way it currently is. Wilderness does grow back in the sense that like everything will decay and trees will grow back, but the game still leaves something there. It leaves like the terraces that have been flattened out, and the mines will be a nightmare to try to fix unless you have a strong waller.
Mm-hmm.
And so it would be, the analogy would be like I color in a coloring book, and then I go and take a nice eraser and erase it all, but there's still smudges, and then say, here's your new coloring book. I still think that leaves an element of, I don't really want that one. I still want a fresh new one. That would be better.
Yeah, so let's continue with this analogy. So if we're looking specifically, new players going, I want wilderness, and we want to, and the devs are looking, okay, let's solve that problem. How do we create wilderness in the old server? And we're looking at it now, and the way that it works is it kind of works. Things decay, things go away, stuff comes back. But like you're saying, Adam, it's like erasing, like using eraser in a coloring book. It's not 100%. You'd notice that people are there. So then the devs would then have to go in and go, okay, then how do we make this area pristinely wilderness again, or untouched again? And they can do this. Like, this is not out of the realm of possibility, and they've actually taken steps in the past to make things decay faster, to clean up the land, for things to return back to its wilderness state. And let's say they did that. Let's say, okay, we've deemed that wilderness is an untouched land is what players want, and then they go through the old server, they apply changes that closes up mines and gets rid of the look of where deeds used to be, and then players go onto it. Now, is this enough? Let's say you, Zetran, is this enough now to convince you to go to the old servers, knowing that there's tons of untouched land now? that you can go and discover, with the added benefit that those lands once belonged to somebody in the past, to kingdoms in the past potentially, and you can uncover it with archaeology.
Right.
Was that the problem? Just not having a trace of previous settlements?
Right, like you're saying, like completely erase and like mold the land. Like
Over
have the land
time, the land
go naturally
remolds, mines close up, erase the smudge marks. Is that
Yes.
enough? Because that might be enough for you, Zetrin. It might not be enough
think
for
that'd be
everybody.
That might be enough, and I think like it because the current method that they use to create pristine lands is just open another server, which we all know the long-term detrimental effects of that. I think this would really solve that problem. There's going to be a lot of problems implementing it. Like, for example, it obviously would be like off deed things. Like if it's not on deed, then things are going to start reverting back to natural form. But what
Right.
what about like highways or roads? I guess they could sort of like
And Deathwind,
the new highway system.
this wouldn't erase old settlements, but remember that there are things in the game that last forever, essentially, like just forever, and it clutters the land, that they could do to get rid of that sort of thing over time. You would still see old settlements, you just wouldn't be around indefinitely, which ruins this whole wilderness aspect.
I mean, it could be on long time scales. It could be like, let's say the deed fell and things start decaying, and once the last building is gone, then that area becomes like starting to revert back, and that process can happen over maybe months or something like that. I'm thinking the problem I'm seeing is that if you start having naturally changing lands, things like public mines, for example, might run into problems. Like if, let's say, they say, okay, well, this mine hasn't been on deed for X many, so start collapsing, right? Let's start increasing the rate at which collapses happen. Well, now you'd have to reinforce all your off-deed mines, creating more work for everybody.
Yeah, so in Blue Cortana, your opinion of that you don't have to live on like old lands, you could just sail there and do archaeology, but the goal here, remember, is that like the question is, how do we get players to go to the old servers? How do we balance out the population? And yeah, for sure, this is why most players are going to the new servers. We're trying to figure out, like, as a dev, I'd be telling myself, okay, what is it exactly that is attracting players to the new land? What does a virgin land mean to new players? And then the Zetrin so far has said, to me, it means that it's untouched, or that it actually appears untouched, right? Because untouched land just means that like a bunch of mechanics and a bunch of things in the game determines an untouched state, and devs can look at that and be like, okay, we can reproduce that on the old servers. And that's as far as we've gotten so far. That's as far as we got.
Land is only one thing, right?
There are other things
that
potentially
new players are looking for.
Yeah, that are stopping new players from going out. And there are things that they can't control. Like a player might say right now, this is one thing. A player might say, I'm going to the new server because, you know, that's where the community is. I want more chance to play with players, right? Well, why are the players there to begin with, right? That's something a dev can't solve by saying, okay, we'll just put community over here. Like that, they can't do that. So they have to go, okay, why is the community here? What is it about these locations that they like going to? Is it the allure of the new server? What about the allure? Is it on the new server that makes them want to go there? And then they'd have to keep peeling that onion.
Part about the community at the beginning is that everybody's starting off with new characters, and it gives the new players, especially somebody who's never played Wurm before, the feeling that they're going to be sort of at least at the same level-ish as most other players who are starting at the same time as them. As opposed to going on the old servers, you're mostly playing with people who've been playing for years, and their skills are all way ahead of yours in different stages of the game.
Okay, so let's eliminate the fact that veteran players can level up faster, and that balance doesn't stay past the first day of a new server.
First month, yeah, let's say.
First month, let's say, whatever. Okay, so let's get rid of that whole thing where, yes, that's true, but then what about it is true to these players?
See,
that
typical saying that
make
feeling
them
is
want.
false, but
Yes, typical.
The thing is
You're
that
correct.
it's not false if that's the way people feel, right? Because
Yeah, it's
For
false in the
example-
sense that the mechanics don't support it, but it's not false in the sense that people feel it.
even for us as players who have been playing this game forever, starting on the new server really revitalized our passion for the game. We would never have been playing this amount of Wurm if they didn't start new servers that were fresh. Like if they started this server connected to the old one, like they said, we'll just make a new server, but it's connected to the old one, I don't think we would be streaming, and I don't think we would be playing right now because of the feeling that we get when we play on a fresh new server. There's something about it that's different.
But what is it?
We're trying to pinpoint what it
Yeah.
is that it is, but it's definitely
Okay,
not.
So let's say
invisible.
it's the skill. How do we eliminate the idea that this server's been on forever? I can't compete. I'd be entering this world that I can't deal with.
I mean, at least it's. I mean, sure, you can't compete even with the veterans who's starting here, but at least it's better.
But that
than
doesn't
all
solve
veterans
the
starting at
feeling.
90 skill.
All right, but it's true. Okay, so let's say we know and everybody here knows, okay, well, this is like an illusion. It's an illusion. They feel this way, but we kind of know that it's not really the truth. Veteran players will always have an advantage no matter where we go, blah, 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 all this stuff. It really doesn't take that long to get to 70. It doesn't take that long to get to 90. Like, there's always going to be somebody.
Barentor's saying
So
1 month in we'll have 90 skill people, but the thing is that it's not like 1 month in everybody will be 90, right? Like you go to the old servers, everybody has a 90 skill, like everybody.
okay,
And 1 month in here, it's not going to be like that for sure.
so we can't change the fact that people are going to progress in this game. We can't change the fact that people know how to play this game and other people don't, right? But how do we then take that and use it as an advantage for the old servers or for Wurm in general, but specifically in this case, the old server? And what basically has to happen is you have to take that essence of we've got skilled players, we have veteran players, we have new players. The problem we have deemed here is that new players feel intimidated on playing with the veteran players when it's so apparent on an old server. And so the devs would have to look at this and say, okay, then how do we take that dynamic and then say to the new players looking at the old servers, I want to play on that old server because this is the case. Because we have old players and new players and there's something. And in order to accomplish that, changes and design changes would have to be made. To then say to a new player, wow, there's this world. Let's say they implement this untouched thing. The world is untouched, but has history, has places to go visit. There's veteran players that are there that have high skill. And to me, as a new player, we'd have to change the opinion that is actually really good to have old players there. And you could do that with a bunch of new systems in place that make it so a veteran player to a new person has gameplay mechanics in there that would be beneficial to everybody.
Right.
And I'm not just talking about like something like a mentorship system or something that encourages those players to need to interact, to benefit each other, that makes it turns this whole situation to a positive than into a negative. right? Because we're looking at it like it's us versus them, or it's them versus us. But that's not what Wurm is about. It's about us being together
Yeah, and having the
in
game
a
be
world
appealing to as
and
many
have
people as
the
possible.
game. Yeah. And so there's ways to do this, and ways to do this, like Des was saying, that would not be too abusive for alts to accomplish. And that
Now,
and
the other thing that we have to, if I could just throw this also into this discussion, is that like there is going to come a point where the new server is no longer a new server, and people are still going to be discovering the game through Steam. So those new players are going to come in and experience that same feeling of this server is already well developed. There's so many veterans. Whatever the issue is that prevents people from going to those old servers is going to be there once this server is old. And I think that the devs do need to address this to help the long-term health of the game.
And so let's say they do this, right? Now we have untouched land on the old servers. Now we have some sort of, we get rid of that adversity between new players and old players, however they do that. And we make it so it's a positive to have new players and old players on a server, and the new players are looking at it as more of a positive than a negative. So let's say we get to that point. Is there anything else that anybody can think that would stop a new player from wanting to go to these old servers?
Is there anything that can be
No,
done?
let's just
Is that
let's
what you're
just
asking?
no, let's just
Or what are the
look at
what are the things
what
that
other
are gonna
things
prevent them?
that are going to prevent them.
Right. I mean, I think back to like all those new players that we encountered over the years, and I noticed something. It was that when you give them stuff, right? Like let's say a new player comes in, I say, "Oh, you're new. You must want this 50 quality armor set. That I mean, it's not so high. 50 quality. Here you go. And here's a 50 quality weapon and some 50 quality tools. Now go." I find that when you do that, the player doesn't continue playing, right? Because now what are they going to do? They're like, okay, well, I got everything that I need. What should I do now? I don't need anything, so it doesn't seem like there's much motivation to play anymore. It's like, I was going to make myself that 20 quality hammer, but now that I have a 51, I don't need to do that. And right, like there is an element of once you have these old established servers, there's just an abundance of things, so the new player doesn't feel like they need to do anything anymore to survive or to progress. Or so I don't know what the solution to this is, but I think that that's one of the things that
Okay.
might be influencing.
So this could be uncovered a lot of ways. And if we're just going to say this is how the game is, it's not going to change, then yes, we're going to have problems, and we can't. And the solution isn't like typical. Veterans just need to be less generous. Yeah, but
Stop
I
helping.
feel like if like as a developer, so we're looking at it from like, let's say game design. If you were, I mean, if we were, and this is to everybody, if we were all the owners of Wurm and we were tasked to solve that problem, how would you solve it? Would you do something drastic, negative, item decay, the elimination of items? Would you do that? Would you do something else?
Sipiku says the solution is to add periodical fun content patches to make people play for the new stuff, but you need a paid full dev team for that. Yeah, I mean that would be great.
Consistent content, sure.
I mean, as it is, they are doing a decent job considering the size of the dev team at new stuff. But yeah,
We would just tell the players, just
it'd be faster.
suck it up. That's your solution, Griffo.
Right. As they quit. So the problem is that they just the new players aren't going to stick around for it if nothing changes.
Well, okay, let's go back a little bit, because you're to reestablish what the exact issue here is. Your issue is that a new player comes into the game, gets items from a veteran that are high level, and then determines to themselves, I'm done. I don't know what to do now.
It's that feeling, like the same thing that we were talking about.
I got rid of
once
this
you
feeling.
finish making your deed, you make your tools, you make your buildings, you finish with your deed and everything like that, and then the player's like, okay, now what? And that's
Okay,
around
so
the time that they stop playing.
now let's look at this
Now
from a new player's lens, okay? Not from a veteran lens or an alt lens or all this stuff. So I'm gonna say something that's gonna be controversial. So how about a new player comes in, and the problem is, let's say we give them a pickaxe, and that pickaxe is high level, and they're able, it's very, very good to use, huge, like amazing pickaxe. But these players are, mining. They don't know how to use a pickaxe. They don't know how to use
like a 70
this
quality
thing.
pickaxe or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you change that?
So why don't you
say
say
the new player gives them a 1 quality 80 COC pickaxe?
Yeah.
I mean,
So
it's the same kind of thing.
would it change? So two things could happen here in this situation. We could make it so that player can't actually use that. They're just not skilled enough to use that. It's too good to use. Would that solve the problem of the player now having this pickaxe and going, wow, I've got this awesome thing, but all I need to do is accomplish this before I'm allowed to use that? Would that make them stay into the game and try to accomplish that? Would that solve the problem of veterans giving new players lots of stuff?
Right. So you can't equip 50 quality gear unless your skill is like
whatever.
a certain level.
Don't worry about the actual mechanics of it. We're more worried about how the new player would take that. Because they can make that
for sure.
lots. They can implement that a number of ways. It can't be as simple as just like gain this level up and then you're good to go. Like it'll be more complex than that.
Somehow earn the ability to use.
Okay, it's one of two things. So that, or making it so they can use the item, but it's much less effective. It doesn't have the ability to utilize certain things about that pickaxe because they're just not skilled to do that. They can still use it, but it's like still crappy to them.
Right. I see what you're saying.
So now that also would eliminate the like veterans just giving them all of these like really high level things. It could also potentially eliminate power grinding as well.
Okay, so Sipaku points at Papa Smite. What game in the genre has solved that particular issue or attempted it partially or successfully? That is a good question.
Well, it's a good question in the sense that there's not that many games like Wurm that has this problem.
Has Eve addressed this issue? I don't know because we don't play Eve.
And I would say it this way, because even though this particular problem of these high level items, so is there a game that you can create an item and then you take that item and then you can make it really, really high level? The same item. So two equal pickaxes created in the same way. And then you take one and then you make it really, really good through a type of system like the quality level system, and then take that item and give it to a new player and they have the benefits of it. How many games are like that?
But it doesn't even have to be like that though. The issue shows up whenever you think of games where there's twinking involved.
Yeah.
Right?
But the solution in that sense is different than a solution Wurm would need to do.
Right.
Because the solution in EverQuest, for example, is just like, let's make items, we can't drop them. Let's make items that have a level requirement. Let's make items. And actually, like, sure, that solved the problem for them, but that would ruin the game
the same problem,
for Wurm.
Though. It didn't say the same, it didn't create the same problem because people actually loved twinking, right? Like if that high level person gave you a really high level item, that made you want to play more, right? But in this game, it's like the opposite effect. Somebody gives you all this high level stuff, and then you don't want to play more because the reason is because the main goal in this game is to make all that high level stuff. And if you've given it, then that goal's out the window. And now what? What are you going to do now?
Yeah, and I mean we have that. That's just the way that the game works. So that's Wurm.
Right.
That's what we love about Wurm, actually. We love about the Wurm that everything's droppable. Everything is able to be created. Everything's able to be traded. We don't have any of those restrictions.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to put those restrictions into the game. Right? We still want to be able to give a new player stuff. But how do we...
says, this is a permanent world and stuff will accumulate given enough time anyway. That's another thing I want addressed in this game. I think that they could do a lot more to make things not accumulate as much.
Right. That's another topic entirely. In this topic, it's like, not that we have the items in the game. We have lots and abundance of items. This is going to happen. This is already happening on the new server. The question is, how do we make a new player not feel intimidated by all those new items, or not feel like they want to stop playing even after they obtain the new items from a veteran or whatever? And that's what we're trying to solve. Would they feel still the need to progress even when they have these items? How do we solve that problem? There's a lot of things in this game where that's already solved. They have a lot of dirt. Let's say we give them 5,000 dirt. Let's say we give them 5,000 rock shards or 5,000 stone bricks or whatever. They wouldn't look at that and then say, oh, I've got 5,000 stone bricks. I got to stop playing. Like, I feel so bad. I feel like I've already reached the end, right? So we don't have problems with those items. We have problems with, like, items. I don't know, if we could give them a full set of armor at the highest level, a full set of harvesting items at the highest level or the lowest level with the most TOC or whatever, we feel that would stop players from continuing playing even if they had these items. That's what we're trying to solve. We're not saying we have to give them anything. We're saying that players are being given stuff already. How do we make it so even if that happens, they don't feel discouraged? I think that's the situation we're trying to solve, this scenario. Because remember, the whole idea of this conversation is we solve that scenario, then players feel better about going to the old servers where there's a ton of items there. And more than likely, they're going to be given those items.
Right. Most want to start on their own. You're totally right. And most don't want to accept things. But there's then those people who don't even realize that they don't want to accept things, right? So they'll accept them because the person's being nice and it's like, oh, well, thanks. Like, you're giving me all this stuff. This is awesome. And then it's like only later do they realize, like, now I have all this stuff. Now what am I going to do? It's
not for everything either, right? It's not black and white. Like, let's say I never wanted to be a leather worker. Somebody gives me a saddle that's high quality. I gladly accept it because I have no plans to be a leather. So this is just like, it's a very specific to the player or a new player in general, and the items in general would change depending on the player.
Mm-hmm.
And this would be a lot harder to solve, I would say, because it's very specific to a profession.
We're not doing this optimally. Because
we are 100% not optimally. I don't know how low you're trying to get.
Here. No. I mean to say, I feel like I should be doing the mining.
Oh, I see.
You should be doing the digging. Only because my mining is high enough that I probably will succeed more at that.
All right. I will start digging.
I'm figuring we'll just get rid of the dirt that's here. There's not much left, and
And look
until
at how low you want to go.
like the rock is gonna dip down over here where I am, over here somewhere, or maybe not.
Mhm.
Actually, I don't know. There's rock right up here. We might even want to uncover these tiles over here in this corner.
I
But
just want to
that-
see the uncovered the exact place that we're going to put this chessboard.
Agreed. And we might need to do some digging on the north side a little bit more.
Yeah. How low are we wanting to go? That's a good question. I don't know.
Don't know yet.
For me, it's until Adam is comfortable. Because it would be 100% fine just flattening this whole thing out.
I know. I knew that you'd probably want to just drop dirt.
But Adam wants it to be as natural as possible for this temporary chessboard.
Oh, and Pyro, that's okay. I know it looks like a massive excavation, but this is quite minor, I'd say. It will not take us more than a couple days to finish this, I think.
Yeah. Another, and Sipiku, say what you're saying. They should let us play as horses too. Newbies will catch up in skill as if all the vets are busy trying to mate with one another and grind skill. And you're saying that as like a joke, but that's actually an amazing point that I've mentioned so many times over the years. All you have to do is add variety into this game, like variety in everything, like horizontal level variety.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, anybody can catch up so much quicker because it's not a linear progression anymore. And this goes to like, I mentioned a system where items in general could have multiple different, like as let's say a carpenter, and I'm making a spindle or a mallet, and then all of a sudden at some certain point in this mallet's life cycle, as a master carpenter, I can then change that to do a very specific specialized role,
Right.
which is different
Like it
than
does
other
better at
other
building
mallets.
houses, let's say, for example.
Yeah. And then as opposed to other mallets that will also do different specialized role. And now all of a sudden one mallet's not good for everything. And now we're doing this horizontal progression where now players are needing to have different items to answer different problems. And now you have all this variety and interesting time spent as a player to try to determine which version of items that they want that meet their requirements for what they're doing. And then you're spending a lot of time doing that instead of just the one linear progression. And now it extends the amount of time that a player would want to play, and makes it so new players can come in and have the ability to then create these specialized items much faster at lower levels and still feel like they want to progress more. And there's always something more that you could do, something more that you can accomplish. And it's a different topic altogether, I guess. It's just, how do we keep players around longer? The whole concept of now what? Now what?
Now what? Yeah.
Right? And we've talked about this for years. Like, now what? What could we do now? And really, there's lots of stuff they could do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, everybody reaches that now what stage. I mean, even we did. Like, we would keep ourselves going by creating projects, right? Like, we'll create, like, let's do a labyrinth, and it's like, okay, we have this massive goal that would last us years, and we keep,
Yeah.
And then when
Anyway.
we finish it, it's like, now what, right? Yeah, I definitely feel that, and I feel like that needs to be addressed at some point or another, especially now that Wurm has this larger population, and that population's new and they're at the beginning of their journey, but they need to start working on that stuff now so that by the time people get there, it's in place.